The weight of my father's casket seemed lighter than the burden of disappointment I carried that day. Rain pelted the black umbrellas around me as we lowered him into the ground, but I barely noticed. I was too focused on my brother Zane's hand on my mother's shoulder, his perfectly pressed suit, and that familiar smug expression I'd grown to despise. My name is Tabitha, and I spent 29 years trying to earn my father's approval. Now he was gone, and I'd never get the chance. The reading of the will shall commence in the study, Logan, our family lawyer, announced as mourners began dispersing. His voice carried the same clinical detachment he'd maintained throughout the service. I followed the small procession into my childhood home, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors. The study still smelled like Dad's cigars and leather-bound books. Mom settled into his old armchair, while Zane perched on the desk's edge like he already owned it. I chose to stand. "Shall we begin?" Logan adjusted his glasses and pulled out a thick envelope. "Get on with it," Zane said, checking his watch. "I have a business meeting at 4. Mom shot him an adoring look. "Always the dedicated one, just like your father." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Dedicated. Zane hadn't visited Dad once during his final months of chemotherapy. I was the one who drove him to appointments, managed his medications, and held his hand through the worst nights. Logan cleared his throat and began reading. I, Richard West, being of sound mind. The next 10 minutes were a blur of legal jargon until the words that changed everything. "To my son, Zane, I leave my entire estate, including the family business, all properties, and financial holdings." The room went silent. I waited for the "and to my daughter" part, but it never came. "That's it?" I heard myself ask. "There must be more." Logan shook his head. "I'm afraid that's all, Miss Tabitha." "Well, that's settled then." Zane stood up, straightening his tie. "I'll have my assistant contact you about the paperwork." "Honey," Mom reached for my hand, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Your father knew what he was doing. Zane has the business experience to handle the estate." I yanked my hand away. "Business experience? He's run every venture he's touched into the ground. Dad knew that." Now, Zane smirked. "Don't be bitter, little sister. I'll make sure you're taken care of." "Like hell you will." I turned to Logan. "This can't be legal. I want to contest the will." Logan shifted uncomfortably. "You can try, but everything appears to be in order." I stormed out of the study, but not before catching a snippet of conversation that made me freeze. "The Jensen account," Logan whispered to Zane. "Your father left specific instructions about—" "I know how to handle my father's business," Zane cut him off sharply. Something in Logan's tone made my skin prickle. I lingered just outside the door, straining to hear more. "The debts need to be—" "That's enough, Logan." Zane's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. I said I'll handle it. I pulled out my phone and texted Michael. "Need to talk, now, it's bad." His response was immediate. "Corner booth at Joey's in 20. On my way." As I grabbed my purse, Mom appeared in the hallway. "Tabitha, don't make a scene. Your father wanted—" "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't tell me what Dad wanted. He had months to tell me himself, but he chose not to. Just like he chose to leave me nothing." "You're being dramatic. Zane will take care of everything." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, just like he took care of Dad during his treatment. Or like he took care of that tech startup he crashed last year. That wasn't his fault. The market. Save it." I headed for the door. "I need some air." As I stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but dark clouds still loomed overhead. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamal at work. "Sorry about your dad. Take all the time you need." I typed back. "Actually, I'll be in tomorrow. Need to focus on something else." Walking to my car, I caught sight of Zane through the study window, already sitting in Dad's chair, feet up on the desk. The familiar anger rose in my throat, but this time something else came with it. Determination. I'd overheard enough to know there were problems lurking beneath the surface of Dad's perfect legacy. And if Zane was going to crash and burn, I wanted a front row seat. But first, I needed to talk to Michael. He'd help me figure out what that Jensen account was all about and why it had Logan so worried. Something told me I'd just stumbled onto the tip of a very large iceberg. Joey's diner hadn't changed in the 15 years Michael and I had been meeting there. The same cracked leather booths, the same flickering neon sign, the same coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since morning. He left you nothing. Michael pushed his untouched plate of fries toward me. Not even a token inheritance. I grabbed a fry and dunked it in ketchup. Nothing. But that's not even the weird part. I overheard Logan talking about some Jensen account, and Zane shut him down fast. Like, suspiciously fast. Jensen. Michael pulled out his phone and started typing. As my best friend and a financial analyst, he had access to information most people didn't. Give me a minute. The waitress stopped by to refill our coffee cups. You okay, honey? You look like you've been crying. Just buried my father today, Rita. She squeezed my shoulder. This one's on the house then. Michael looked up from his phone. Found something. Jensen Industrial was one of your dad's biggest clients. They filed for bankruptcy protection last year. And your dad's company was their primary creditor. We're talking millions in outstanding payments. I felt the blood drain from my face. So when Dad left everything to Zane, he also left him a massive financial nightmare. Michael leaned forward. Tabitha, this could sink the entire company if it's not handled right. My phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. She's probably wondering why I'm not home consoling Zane, I muttered. Speaking of home, Michael said carefully, what are you going to do about the mortgage payments? I groaned, dropping my head onto the table. I'd been helping Mom with the house payments since Dad got sick. I can't just stop. She'll lose the house. The house Zane now owns? Yeah, but the same Zane who's never contributed a dime. I know. I sat up straight. But I can't let Mom end up homeless because my brother's an idiot. The bell above the diner door chimed. Jamal, my colleague from work, walked in, scanning the room until he spotted us. Hope you don't mind, I told Michael. I asked him to join. He might have some insights. Jamal slid into the booth beside Michael. Sorry about crashing your meeting. How are you holding up? Been better, but I need your business brain right now. I filled Jamal in on the situation. His expression grew more concerned with each detail. Look, he said finally, I shouldn't tell you this, but there's an opening for senior project manager at the firm. The position reports directly to me. My heart skipped. That's double my current salary. You'd earn every penny. It's high pressure, but, he shrugged, you're the best person for it. She'll take it, Michael interjected. I can speak for myself. I shot him a look, then turned to Jamal. I'll take it. Good, because I already put your name forward. Jamal checked his watch. Interviews Tuesday at 9 a.m. Don't be late. As Jamal left, Michael raised an eyebrow. Well, that's convenient timing. What do you mean? Tabitha, you've been carrying your family's financial burden for years. Maybe it's time to let them deal with their own mess. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Zane. Need Dad's office keys. Bring them home. I typed back, in the top drawer of his desk. Already checked. Not there. I smiled, feeling the weight of the keys in my jacket pocket. Must be lost then. Don't play games, Tabitha. I have work to do. So do I. Starting Tuesday. I switched off my phone and looked at Michael. Want to help me clean out my desk this weekend? I have a feeling I'm going to ace that interview. That's my girl, he grinned. But what about the Jensen account? I'm going to do exactly nothing. I straightened up, feeling lighter than I had in months. Zane wanted it all. He can have it all, including the problems. And your mom's mortgage? I sighed, stirring my coffee. I'll keep paying it, not for Zane, but because I refuse to let his incompetence hurt her. Besides, I smiled grimly. When everything falls apart, she'll need somewhere to live. Michael raised his coffee cup. To karma. To karma. I clinked my cup against his. And to finally letting go. As we left the diner, I felt my phone vibrate again. Probably Zane, still looking for those keys. Let him look. I had a future to plan, and for once, it didn't involve cleaning up anyone else's mess but my own. Congratulations on the promotion, Jamal said, dropping a stack of files on my new desk. Now for your first crisis. I'd barely finished arranging my family photo, the only one where Dad looked proud of me, taken at my college graduation, when reality came crashing in. The Jensen account, I asked, already knowing the answer. Your brother missed this morning's meeting. Third time this month, they've tried to negotiate terms. Jamal leaned against my desk. Word is, they're threatening to take their remaining assets elsewhere. My hands trembled as I opened the first file. The numbers were worse than I'd imagined. Dad's company had extended Jensen Industrial nearly $12 million in credit over the past 2 years. My phone lit up with Mom's message. Mortgage payment is due tomorrow. Zane says he'll handle it this month. Everything okay? Jamal asked. Fine. I pulled up my banking app. Just need to make a quick transfer. The same transfer you've made every month for the past year. I looked up sharply. How did you? I pay attention. He crossed his arms. You know, letting them fail isn't the same as causing them to fail. Before I could respond, my office door burst open. Zane stood there, looking distinctly unput together in a wrinkled suit. Well, well, he sneered. Someone's moving up in the world. This is a private office, I said coldly. You need an appointment. Jamal straightened up. I'll give you 2 a minute. As soon as the door closed, Zane slumped into the chair across from me. I need access to Dad's private accounts. Why would I have that? Because you were his little secretary during the end. He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. There has to be more money somewhere. Emergency funds, offshore accounts, something. I kept my face neutral, even as satisfaction bloomed in my chest. Having trouble with the Jensen account. How do you know about? Never mind. Look, I just need to buy some time. Like you bought time with the mortgage payment. I pulled up my transfer confirmation. The one you just told Mom you'd handle. His face reddened. That's different. I'm dealing with bigger issues here. Clearly, I stood up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. Dad would have helped me, he said quietly. Dad's not here. I opened my office door, and neither are his secret accounts. After he left, Jamal returned with 2 cups of coffee. Rough conversation. Nothing I can't handle. I accepted the coffee gratefully. But I need a favor. Can you get me the contact information for Jensen Industrial's CFO? Planning to save the family business after all. No, I smiled. Just making sure I have a front row seat when it burns. That evening, I met Michael at our usual spot in Joey's. You should have seen him, I said, recounting Zane's visit. Complete mess. Dad would have been mortified. Speaking of mortified, Michael slid a newspaper across the table. Page 6. The headline made my coffee turn sour. West Industries faces multiple lawsuits from creditors. It's starting, I whispered. You sure you want to watch this happen? I thought about the years of being overlooked, of Zane's smug superiority, of Mom's blind devotion to her precious son. Yes, I said firmly. I need to see this through. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Miss West, this is Thomas from Jensen Industrial. Heard you were asking about us. Can we meet? I showed Michael the message. Careful, he warned. Don't get pulled into their mess. I won't, I typed back. Coffee tomorrow, 8 a.m. The response was immediate. Perfect. There's something you should know about your father's last deal with us. Later that night, as I was leaving the office, I found Logan waiting by my car. You've been busy, he said, holding up a folder, accessing your father's private files, contacting Jensen Industrial. How did you? I've been your father's lawyer for 30 years. I notice things. He handed me the folder, like how he transferred a significant sum to a private account 3 days before he died, an account only you have access to. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting. My dearest Tabitha, if you're reading this, you've already figured out what's coming. I'm trusting you to make the right choice when the time comes. Love, Dad. I looked up, but Logan was already walking away. The right choice about what? I called after him. He turned, his silhouette dark against the parking lot lights. I think you'll know when the time comes. Just remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping aside and letting nature take its course. I clutched the folder to my chest, my mind racing. Tomorrow's meeting with Thomas from Jensen just became a lot more interesting. Thomas from Jensen. Industrial looked nothing like I expected. Instead of a suit-clad executive, I found myself sitting across from a tired-looking man in his 50s, wearing a worn cardigan and nursing his third cup of coffee. "Your father was a good man," he said, stirring another sugar packet into his cup. "But that last deal, it wasn't like him." "What do you mean?" "He knew we were sinking. Everyone did. But he kept extending credit, kept promising things would turn around." Thomas leaned forward. "Then, 3 days before he died, he called me, said everything was arranged, that you would understand when the time came." My hand instinctively touched the folder in my bag. "Did he mention a private account?" "No, but he did say his son wouldn't be able to handle what was coming." Thomas smiled sadly. "Guess he was right about that." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with Mom's call. I declined it, but another immediately followed. "Sorry," I told Thomas. "I should take this." "Tabitha," Mom's voice was shrill. "Where are you? There are people at the house." "What people?" "Men in suits. They're talking about repossession. Zane isn't answering his phone, and I'll be right there." I hung up and looked at Thomas apologetically. He waved me off. "Go. But remember what your father said. When everything falls apart, don't try to catch the pieces." I broke several speed limits getting to my childhood home. 2 black sedans were parked in the driveway, and Mom stood on the porch, wringing her hands. "They say we owe money," she said as I rushed up. "But that's impossible," Zane assured me. "Mrs. West," a man in a dark suit, emerged from the house. "We've completed our initial inventory. Given the circumstances, you have 48 hours to remove personal belongings." "Personal belongings?" Mom's voice rose. "This is my home." "Mom," I took her arm gently. "Let's go inside and talk." In the kitchen, Mom collapsed into a chair. "I don't understand. Zane said everything was fine." He said, "Zane's been lying." I pulled out my phone and showed her the newspaper article. "The company's failing. Has been for months. That's ridiculous. Your father would never." Dad knew. I took out the folder Logan had given me. He saw this coming. The front door slammed. Zane stormed into the kitchen, his face red. "Who called the creditors? Was it you?" He jabbed a finger at me. "No, but I'm not surprised they're here." I stood my ground. "What did you think would happen when you ignored their calls?" "I was handling it. Like you handled the mortgage." I pulled up my banking app. "The one I've been paying for the past year while you pretended everything was fine." Mom's head snapped up. "What? Oh, you didn't know." I turned to her. "Your perfect son hasn't contributed a dime. I've been keeping this roof over your head." "Is this true?" Mom asked Zane. He threw his hands up. "I was investing in the business. Someone had to keep Dad's legacy alive while she was off playing corporate climber." "Playing?" I laughed bitterly. "I just made senior project manager. Meanwhile, you've run Dad's company into the ground in less than 3 months." "Enough." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Zane, tell me exactly what's going on with the company." For the first time, I saw real fear in my brother's eyes. "Mom, there were complications." "We're bankrupt," I said flatly. "Aren't we, Zane?" His silence was answer enough. Mom's face crumpled. "But where will I live?" I took a deep breath. "I have a spare room, until we figure something out." "You?" Mom looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "But Zane needs to deal with the mess he's made." I gathered my keys. "Pack what you need, Mom. I'll be back in 2 hours to help you move." As I walked out, Zane grabbed my arm. "Wait, that private account Dad mentioned to Thomas. You have access to it, don't you?" I pulled away. Goodbye, Zane. Tabitha, please, just alone to tide things over. I can fix this. I paused at the door, remembering Dad's letter. Make the right choice when the time comes. You know what, Zane? For once in your life, you're going to face the consequences of your actions. And I'm going to watch. I left him standing there, surrounded by the ruins of the empire he'd inherited. In my rearview mirror, I could see Mom on the porch, her face in her hands. It hurt. But sometimes healing only starts after everything falls apart. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. You okay? No, I typed back, but I will be. Living with Mom was like sharing space with a ghost. She spent most days staring out my apartment window, clutching her phone, waiting for calls from Zane that never came. He's just busy, she'd say, trying to sort everything out. I was arranging breakfast when Jamal called. Turn on the news, Channel 7. The cereal box slipped from my hand when I saw the headline, West Industries files for bankruptcy. CEO faces criminal investigation. Mom, I called out, but she was already there, eyes glued to the screen. Sources say the CEO, Zane West, may have misappropriated company funds, the reporter announced. Multiple employees report missing paychecks and unauthorized account transfers. Mom's coffee mug shattered on the floor. This can't be happening. My phone exploded with notifications. Michael. You seeing this? Jamal. Meeting in 20. Big news. And finally, Zane. Need to talk. Emergency. I have to go to work, I told Mom, grabbing my keys. But your brother will have to handle this himself. The office was buzzing when I arrived. Jamal waited by my door with a stack of papers. Jensen Industrial wants to meet, he said, as I hung up my coat. They're offering to buy what's left of West Industries' assets. Why are you telling me this? Because they specifically asked for you to handle the negotiations. He dropped the papers on my desk. Apparently, Thomas spoke highly of you. Before I could respond, my office door burst open. Zane stood there, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild. You have to help me, he pleaded. They're saying I committed fraud. Did you? His silence spoke volumes. Get out of my office, I said quietly. Tabitha, please. Dad's account, I know you have access. If I could just... Still looking for handouts, I stood up. Even now. You don't understand. They're talking about prison. Maybe you should have thought about that before stealing from your employees. Jamal cleared his throat. Should I call security? No need. I walked to my brother. You wanted it all, Zane. The company, the responsibility, Dad's legacy. Well, congratulations. It's all yours, including the consequences. Mom will never forgive you for this. He spat. Mom needs to wake up and see you for who you really are. After he left, Jamal handed me a tissue. I hadn't realized I was crying. The Jensen meeting is at 2, he said gently. If you're up for it. I wiped my eyes. I'll be there. During lunch, I met Michael at Joey's. The TV above the counter was still playing news about West Industries. You okay? He asked. Better than I expected. I stirred my coffee. It's almost a relief, watching it all finally fall apart. And the private account your dad left you? Still untouched? I smiled. Dad knew this would happen. He was giving me a choice. Save Zane or let him fall. Looks like you chose. No, I corrected. Zane chose. Every time he lied, every time he stole, every time he refused to take responsibility. I'm just refusing to clean up his mess. My phone buzzed. Mom, please talk to your brother. He's desperate. Speaking of messes, I showed Michael the text. She's still defending him. Give her time. Reality's a harsh teacher, but an effective one. The Jensen meeting that afternoon was brief. Thomas laid out their offer, pennies on the dollar, for what remained of Dad's company. Your father would understand, he said, as I reviewed the papers. Sometimes things need to fall apart completely before they can be rebuilt. I signed the documents, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. That evening, I found Mom watching the news again. Zane's face filled the screen as he pushed through a crowd of reporters. "I could have helped him," she whispered. "No, Mom, you helped him too much already. We all did." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "When did you get so strong?" "I've always been strong. You just never noticed because you were too busy watching Zane." My phone lit up with a text from Logan. "Your father would be proud. The account is yours to use, as you see fit now." I thought about Dad's letter, about making the right choice. Maybe the right choice wasn't about saving or destroying. Maybe it was about letting things follow their natural course. "Mom," I said, "want to help me make dinner?" She nodded, finally turning off the TV. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, I realized some things had to break completely before they could start to heal. The knock came at midnight. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Zane stood in my hallway, soaked from the rain, holding a duffel bag. Gone was the expensive suit, replaced by jeans and a worn sweater. Gone was the smug smile, replaced by desperate eyes. "They froze my accounts," he said quietly. "All of them." Behind me, Mom appeared in her robe. "Zane, baby, what happened?" "Not now, Mom." I blocked her path to him. "Why are you here, Zane?" "I need a place to stay, just for a few days, until—" "Until what?" "Until the fraud charges disappear. Until Dad's company magically rebuilds itself." Mom tried to push past me. "Tabitha, he's your brother." "Yes, and he's also under investigation for stealing from his employees." I turned to her. "Remember Carl, Dad's old maintenance guy? Zane stole his pension." Zane's face reddened. "I was going to pay it back." "With what money?" I stepped into the hallway, pulling my door shut behind me. "The money you gambled away, or the money you spent on that yacht." "I made mistakes, okay?" His voice cracked. "Is that what you want to hear?" I screwed up. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay back the people you stole from." He slumped against the wall. "What do you want from me, Tabitha?" "I want you to grow up. I want you to face consequences for once in your life. But mostly," I took a deep breath, "I want you to leave." "Where am I supposed to go?" "The same place Dad's employees went when they couldn't pay their rent because of you." My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "News vans outside your building. Heads up." "They followed me," Zane admitted. "The reporters." I didn't know where else to go. I heard the elevator ding. Voices and footsteps approached. "Mr. West, can you comment on the allegations? Is it true you embezzled millions? Where have you been hiding?" I grabbed Zane's arm and pulled him inside my apartment, slamming the door on the shouted questions. "Thank you," he breathed. "Don't. You're not staying." I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Jamal? Remember that favor you owe me? I need it now." 20 minutes later, Jamal's car pulled up behind my building. The reporters were still camped out front. "He'll take you to a motel," I told Zane. "One night. That's all you get." Mom grabbed my arm. "You can't send him away. Watch me." I handed Zane some cash. "After tonight, you're on your own." "The private account." He tried one last time. "Dad left it to you for a reason." "Yes, he did. To see what I do with it." I opened the back door. "And what I'm doing is letting you face reality." As Zane walked toward Jamal's car, Mom called out, "Wait." We both turned. "Did you really steal Carl's pension?" For the first time, Zane couldn't meet her eyes. "Mom, yes or no?" "Yes." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face crumpled, but not in the way it usually did when Zane was in trouble. This was different. This was realization. "Go," she whispered. After Zane left, Mom sat at my kitchen table, staring at her hands. "I enabled him, didn't I?" "We all did, Dad included." "But you didn't." She looked up at me. "You saw him clearly, all along." My phone buzzed again. "Logan, police want to question Zane tomorrow. Thought you should know." "What happens now?" Mom asked. "Now," I sat across from her. "Now we let justice run its course." "Will he go to prison?" "Probably." She nodded slowly. Maybe that's what he needs. Mom, I've spent so many years making excuses for him, defending him, but stealing from Carl? She shook her head. Your father trusted those people. They were like family. I reached across the table and took her hand. You know what Dad told me in his letter? He said to make the right choice when the time came. I think this is what he meant. Letting Zane face consequences. Letting the truth come out, all of it. My phone lit up with a news alert. Former West Industries CEO. To face criminal charges, employees speak out. Mom squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I never saw how strong you were. I'm sorry it took all this for you to see it. Outside, the reporters were still waiting, hoping for a glimpse of Zane. But he was gone, finally facing the reality he'd spent so long avoiding. And for the first time, neither Mom nor I was trying to shield him from it. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived. 3 months had passed since Zane's midnight visit, and today was his sentencing hearing. Miss West, they thrust microphones at me. Will you be testifying against your brother? Any comment on the plea deal? What about the missing pension funds? I pushed through them, spotting Michael waiting by the entrance. Ready for this? He asked. No, but it needs to be done. Inside, Mom sat in the front row, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She'd aged years in the past few months. He wants to see you, she said as I sat beside her. Before the hearing. No. Tabitha, please. He's different now. He understands. Mrs. West, a bailiff approached. Your son is asking for you. Mom looked at me pleadingly. I nodded. Go. He needs at least one of us to believe in him still. While she was gone, Logan slid into the seat next to me. The account, he said quietly. Have you decided what to do with it? Actually, yes. I handed him a folder. I want to set up a trust for the employees who lost their pensions. He smiled. Your father would approve. I know. The courtroom doors opened. Zane entered in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him. Mom followed, wiping her eyes. All rise. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. I barely heard the formal charges being read. My focus was on Zane, who kept turning to look at me. Finally, the judge spoke directly to him. Mr. West, before I pass sentence, would you like to address the court? Zane stood. Yes, Your Honor. He turned to face the gallery. I've prepared a statement. My stomach clenched. Here it came. More excuses, more manipulation. I'm guilty, he began. Not just of the charges, but of betraying every person in this room. My father built his company on trust and respect. I destroyed it with greed and lies. The room went silent. My sister, his voice cracked, tried to warn me. She saw what I was becoming, but I was too arrogant to listen. And now people like Carl, who worked for my father for 30 years, have lost everything because of me. I felt Mom's hand grip mine. I don't deserve forgiveness, Zane continued. I deserve whatever sentence you give me. But I want everyone to know, especially my sister, that I finally understand what Dad was trying to teach us. Success isn't about power or money. It's about integrity. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. West. Please be seated. What followed was a blur of legal terms, but the final sentence cut through clearly. 5 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 3. Additionally, you are ordered to make full restitution to all affected employees. Mom started crying. I sat perfectly still. As they led Zane away, he caught my eye one last time. No pleading, no manipulation, just acceptance. Outside, the reporters swarmed again, but Jamal appeared out of nowhere, creating a path through them. Your car's ready, he said. Unless you want to make a statement. Actually, I do. I turned to face the cameras. West Industries was built on trust. While that trust was broken, we're taking steps to make it right. Starting today, we're establishing a trust fund for all employees who lost their pensions. It won't erase what happened, but it's a start. Later, at Joey's, Michael raised his coffee cup. To justice. To consequences, I corrected, and to finally being free of them. Mom looked up from her untouched pie. What happens now? Now, I pulled out Dad's letter, worn from countless readings. Now we rebuild, not the company, that's gone, but ourselves. And Zane has 3 years to figure out who he is without anyone protecting him. My phone buzzed, a text from Carl. Saw the news about the trust fund. Thank you. You know, Mom said slowly, your father used to say you had his business sense. I never understood what he meant until now. Better late than never, I smiled. As we left the diner, I spotted Logan waiting by my car. One last thing, he said, handing me an envelope. Your father left instructions to give you this after everything was settled. Inside was a single photo, Dad and me at my first business competition in high school. On the back, he'd written, to my daughter, who always knew the value of doing what's right, not what's easy. The company was Zane's inheritance, but my legacy, that was always yours. I looked up, but Logan was already walking away, disappearing into the evening crowd. Behind me, Mom and Michael waited patiently. Ready to go? Michael asked. Yeah, I tucked the photo into my pocket. I'm ready. The prison visiting room smelled like cheap coffee and disinfectant. I sat at the metal table, watching Zane approach in his orange jumpsuit. He looked thinner, his usual swagger replaced by a careful humility. I didn't expect you to come, he said, sitting down. Neither did I. I placed a manila envelope on the table. But there's something you need to see. Inside were documents from the trust fund. Every former West Industries employee had received their full pension, plus interest. How? Zane's hands trembled as he read. The company was bankrupt. Dad left me an account, remember, the one you kept asking about. Understanding dawned on his face. And you used it to pay back everyone I hurt. Not everyone. Some things can't be repaid. He nodded, pushing the envelope back to me. You did the right thing, like always, not always. I watched you destroy yourself and did nothing to stop it. Because I needed to fall. He managed a small smile. Mom told me you're running your own consulting firm now. Someone has to rebuild our family's reputation. A guard approached. Time's up. Zane stood. Tabitha, thank you, not for coming today, but for letting me face this. I left the prison and found Mom waiting in the car. How is he? She asked. Different. Better, maybe. My phone rang. Jamal's name flashing on the screen. Turn on the business news, he said when I answered. Mom and I watched on my phone as the anchor reported. In a surprising turn of events, former West Industries employees have banded together to start a new company, with Tabitha West as lead consultant. The company, Phoenix Consulting, has already secured several major contracts. They're talking about us, Mom whispered. That's not all, Jamal continued. Jensen Industrial wants to partner with Phoenix. Thomas specifically asked for you to lead the negotiations. I ended the call and looked at Mom. Ready to go home? Actually, she straightened up. I've been thinking about getting my own place. What? You were right. I need to stop depending on my children. I've found a small apartment, and I'm going back to teaching. Pride swelled in my chest. Dad would love that. At Joey's that evening, Michael raised his coffee cup. To Phoenix rising from the ashes. To new beginnings, Mom corrected, joining the toast. To consequences and growth, I added. The bell above the door chimed. Carl walked in, followed by several other former West Industries employees. Hope we're not interrupting, he said, pulling up a chair, but we wanted to show you something. They spread blueprints across the table, plans for Phoenix's first major project. We're not just rebuilding a company, Carl explained. We're building a family, the right way this time. Rita, the waitress who'd been serving us for years, brought over a fresh pot of coffee. On the house, boss. She winked at me. Boss. Michael raised an eyebrow. I bought the diner, I admitted. Couldn't let our meeting spot get sold to some chain restaurant. Mom touched my hand. Your father would be so proud. I know. I pulled out the worn photo from my pocket. Dad and me at that high school competition. He always was, I just couldn't see it then. My phone buzzed with a text from Logan. Your father's last request is complete. The trust fund paperwork is finalized. Well done. Looking around the diner, at Mom finally standing on her own, at Carl and his team planning our future, at Michael who'd stood by me through everything, I realized Dad's legacy wasn't just about money or business. It was about choices, about facing consequences, about rebuilding what was broken. You know what? I stood up. Coffee's on the house for everyone tonight. Careful, Michael laughed. That's no way to run a business. No, I smiled. But it's a perfect way to build a family. As the diner filled with laughter and conversation, I thought about Zane in his prison cell, Mom in her new apartment, and the phoenix rising from the ashes of West Industries. We'd all lost something, but maybe we'd found something more valuable: truth, strength, and the courage to begin again. The bell chimed again as more familiar faces walked in. Former employees, new clients, old friends, each one carrying a piece of our shared story, each one part of this unexpected rebirth. More coffee? Rita asked. Yes, I said, watching my new family grow around me. I think we're going to need it.